This is Ryan Shelkett from Cross My Heart and Liars Academy, and you're listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with another brand new episode. And in the guest host chair today, I've got Stacy Hilt back on the show. Stacy, welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having me again, man. I enjoy being on here with you.
Yes, it's great to have you back, Stacy. I have not seen you since the last Casket Lottery gig in Brooklyn. And you know what? It was nice to walk in there and see you sitting at the bar and just talk to you for most of the night.
Yeah, it was a good time, man. That was a really good show too. Vitus is always like a really good spot for us. It has been since our reunion tour in 2018.
I remember that. Yes,
it has such a CBGB's vibe, but clean.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I tell everybody. It's like, what's it like? It's like it's CBGB's if they had a good cleaner. Because I mean, that's the one thing I always took away from CBGB's. And you walk through it, the hardwood floors always felt like they were about to give. And then everything just had this like layer of grit on it. And then obviously the bathroom wasn't usable. And Vitus has all those things on check. So you can, use the restroom and walk safely across the floor. And it's pretty clean.
Yeah, I never saw a show at CB's. However, one night I was in New York City hanging out with friends. And we stopped in there and I used the dreaded bathroom. So I've used the bathroom, but haven't seen a show there. And I think that's a good claim to fame.
Well, that could be better than seeing a show there. I mean, it all depends. That's an experience in and of itself.
Well, it's great to have everybody back. Stacy, it's great to have you here. And you know what, everybody? We've got a fantastic show for you today. We have Dave Nesmith. The guy is a legend. He's been in like 8,000 bands. Maximillian Colby, Men's Recovery Project, Sleepytime Trio, Regents, and of course, Bats and Mice. And Bats and Mice have a new record coming out soon. We talk about that. We talk about Dave's extensive music history. You've heard it, Stacy, right? Tell them what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, it's odd to see how often you hear certain musicians in certain scenes, like how their lives mirror yours, like almost identically. And it's pretty awesome here. There's a great interview and so many good points, musical experiences, like his rap career. Is there and hanging out in the DC with the punks and stuff like that? I mean, that's a childhood that like you dream about having, where you see like you have Fugazi at your fingertips, you have Hoover at your fingertips. Any band that comes through there, I mean, they have the best clubs. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stories in this one, and Dave has created so much good music. Sleepytime Trio has always been one of my favorite bands, and everything else he's been involved in is great. That conversation is coming up shortly, but first, here's how you can support The New Scene. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at New Scene Pod. We've got shirts available at Death Wish Inc. Reviews. Give us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and you can leave feedback on Spotify. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, and you can always email me at newscenepod@iodinerecords.com. Also, don't forget to support Iodine Recordings. The Jerome's Dream Audio Tree live session is up right now on YouTube, and I highly, highly recommend that you check it out. They also have European tour dates kicking off July 18th in Germany. One Line Drawing is hitting the East Coast starting July 14th, and that tour goes through July 24th. The Iron Roses have announced their new LP, and you can listen to the new single, Screaming for a Change, right now on all streaming services. Audio Karate are playing a hometown show August 19th at the Paramount in Los Angeles. So if you're in LA, go check it out. No Man has tour dates with FAM, and those kick off July 14th in Iceland and are continuing throughout Europe in July. Sign up for the Iodine email list. You'll find out about everything first. For more information, head to the Iodine Instagram at Iodine Recordings or head to the Iodine website at iodinerecordings.com. And don't forget to support this month's sponsor, New Morality Zine. New Morality Zine is a Midwest-based zine and independent record label specializing in hardcore, post-hardcore, and alternative music. The label has released music for bands such as Sunstroke, Buggin', Life's Question, Downward, Spitehouse, Demo Division, Spaced, and more. Pre-orders are up for Curse the Knife's Thank You for Being Here. Pick that up. The Sunstroke Bent Blue 7-inch is out now. Si Dios Quiere have a summer sampler out with some new songs, and they have select US tour dates this summer. Stateside have a second single out called If You Were Still Here. That's from their debut, It's What We Do, and that's out July 31st. Also, don't forget to pick up Downward's 2 songs on 7-inch vinyl. It's available for the first time on 7-inch vinyl. These songs originally released in 2020 and became instant fan favorites. Pick one up from the store or from the band as they play throughout the US this July. Also, don't forget, you get 10% off any order in the New Morality Zine web store with the code NEWSCENEPOD. That's all one word, NEWSCENEPOD. For more information, head to the NMZ Instagram at New Morality Zine, or head to their website at newmoralityzine.com. Okay, so, Stacy, I have to know, what have you been listening to lately? Lay it on us. It can be anything. It can be video game music, it can be jazz, it can be classical, it can be old supermarket commercials from the 1980s. It doesn't matter what it is, lay it on us.
That would be a hell of a library if I was listening to that stuff. I'm listening to a band called Active Child. It's kind of electronic pop music, and they've been around for a while. Been listening to a lot of Pliny from Australia, and it's basically just instrumental prog rock, I guess. And then a lot of also Polyphia, which is more instrumental prog rock. So that's pretty much all I've been listening to, is a lot of instrumental stuff and just podcasts.
Nice. I'm listening to Helios. That's like a kind of an ambient slowcore. No, not slowcore. It's like ambient, basically. Ambient. I've been on an ambient kick, Stacy. So I've been listening to Helios. I've been listening to Goldmund. I've been listening to July Skies. I've been listening to a little Brian Eno, that song and ending that's at the end of the movie Traffic. I've been listening to that over and over. I'm on a bit of an ambient kick.
All right, that's not Helios. I'm on Are they on Spotify? I'm on Spotify. I just looked up. Okay, here we go. It took me to the Fray, who has an album called Helios, and I was like, that's not who I'm looking for.
No, you want the artist.
All right,
Helios.
Got it.
It's good stuff. So that's what I've been listening to. Oh, and I listened to Jerome's Dream, The Gray in Between, again today. They just recently did an audio tree session.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was so good, and it got me in the mood to listen to them again. And we got a shout out during the audio tree session, Stacy, the new scene.
Oh, that's amazing. And audio tree is fantastic. Every performance I've seen on there has been amazing. This Town Needs Guns, that one, that was like one of my favorite audio tree performances. It was fantastic. And then like Chon was on there, and they were great. Yeah, I've seen so many good ones on there.
They do such a good job with those. And I'll play the clip when Stacy and I come back in segment 3. So make sure you check back in with us, because we have a lot to talk about. I know you have a lot to talk about, Stacy, right? You recently parted ways amicably with the Casket Lottery after a historic multi-decade run, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes. So we'll cover that. Stacy and I will talk about how we're doing. And I'm sure we'll talk about gaming too, because we love that. So make sure you check back in with us in segment 3. But right now, we are going to speak to Dave Nesmith of Bats and Mice. Enjoy. All right. We are here now with Dave Nesmith. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, Dave, it's fantastic to have you here. You know, you've been involved with a lot over the years. Maximillian Colby, Sleepytime Trio, Regents, Bats and Mice. I hear rumors that there's new Bats and Mice music coming.
Yes.
The first in a long time. And you know what, Dave? We're going to cover all of that and probably more. But first, I want to open with this question to you.
Sure.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I actually had a pretty good summer so far. It's actually been a little bit of a crazy week because my wife she's a ER doctor, and she's like,
Whoa.
yeah, she's trying to get all her shifts in before we leave for India on a vacation on Monday. So it's like I am like at our in-laws' house in Virginia Beach, and during the day, I work my day job, and then they watch the boys, and then we've just been having fun, like going to the beach and stuff like that. But it is kind of a little hectic, and there's going to be a lot of packing this weekend before we leave. So
you're going on a vacation to India on Monday.
Yes. Yeah.
When you said that, I felt a sinking feeling in my chest. So I can only imagine what you feel right now.
Oh, sinking because it would be like a very stressful thing for you?
Just because of all the prep, like, do I have the tickets?
Yeah,
do I have the passports? Are the kids packed? Are we going to make it on time?
Yeah, I know. Actually, it's funny because my father-in-law just like wrote me today, or texted me, and it was just like, make sure you print out like multiple copies of your visas. Because I had to get the e-visas, which was pretty easy actually online. And but then he just got really worried. Like I had to have multiple copies of them, and he said put them in all like separate suitcases. Make sure you have them.
That's very solid dad advice.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
Like
It felt very dad. But yeah, so this is my wife's family is from India. She was born here. I actually got married in India. But this is the first time I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. It's the first time that they've gotten to go. It's just like with COVID and like other like life events, we've never been able to make it. So we finally like put our feet down and we're like, oh, okay, we're going.
That's exciting. I like that.
Yeah. I'm really excited about it. That she's got a lot of cousins there. One of her cousins has like a organic farm that he does a CSA out of in Hyderabad, and so I get to see that, and then we're just gonna go to the beach there as well. So that won't be too much different, but it'll be fun to be in India and do that.
Wow, yeah, that's awesome. Where are you based in Virginia?
Well, so I actually live in Hillsborough, North Carolina, but I'm just in Virginia Beach right now for, to get childcare support while I work during the day doing programming stuff, like software stuff. And so, yeah, this is this is how we can get it done. Well, my wife has like 5 or 6 shifts in a row. So
yeah, ER doctor, that's intense.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Like she did a residency. I mean, we are originally from Virginia. Like, I went to college at JMU, and she went to college at UVA, and I was born in North Carolina, but I was raised mostly in Northern Virginia, and Virginia feels, like home. But now there's a little town like 15 minutes north of Chapel Hill called Hillsborough that we live in. We've got a little farm. We've got like 20 acres. We've got goats. We've got chickens. And it's awesome. I love doing it. But it is a lot of work, at times, but it's also fun to see the boys just they get so excited about running around outside and playing with the goats and yeah.
That sounds like a really nice setup. So did you have to learn how to be a farmer to a degree?
A little bit. I mean, I grew up on a horse farm because my mom, it was a riding instructor. My dad is he was a Marine for a long time, but then he became a lawyer, and like his dream was always to be like a country lawyer. Like he actually wrote this in like elementary school that he has like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he's like, I want to be a country lawyer. And then my mom always loved horses, so she wanted to be a riding instructor. So I grew up on the that farm up in Northern Virginia, but I did a lot. I always joke like I did a lot more shoveling than I did riding. So, but I learned a lot. I did. I mean, it was a lot of work. I had a lot of chores as a kid, So I learned a lot of grit. I learned a lot of I mean, I think there's some of that punk like DIY-ness that I learned. And then grew up. Luckily, I grew up basically like 30 minutes from DC. So, I had the positive force scene that I got to be a part of, which was amazing. So it was a very lucky location for me.
Oh, yeah. You're close to a lot of action there. I'm curious about your trajectory with music. When did you discover it? How did you get into it? And then talk about like your origins in punk or, underground music.
Yeah, sure. So my best friend, like since the second grade, his name Thelonious. His full name is, or first, is his first name and middle name is Thelonious Wolfgang. So I call him. He also goes by TW. But we went to summer camp together. And, we went to camp as very young. And then as over the years, like some of our friends at camp, all of a sudden, some of them were getting into this new like punk rock thing that we were like, oh, this is very interesting. What is this all about? And TW and I were very much like metalheads. We were like, oh, we love metal. That's what we like, and not like, I'm not even saying like great metal. Like, I mean, great metal to me. I take back it saying that. Like, I'm not going to put any judgment on it. But I was into like Quiet Riot. I was into Def Leppard, Judas Priest, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And and we came back. I remember specifically when we got into punk rock because we came back from summer camp. And this is like 7th or 8th grade. And we went to the record store and we were like, oh, let's check out, our friend Caleb was into this band Dead Kennedys. Okay. So we bought Judas Priest Turbo album and then we bought Dead Kennedys Frankenchrist. And we actually like sat down and listened to them like, back to back. And we were just sort of like, okay, let's try to figure this out. Like, what is better here? And we decided both like, oh, you know what? The music is, we both have pros with the music. We're like into both music, but we were like, Dead Kennedys, like this actually has a message and it's kind of like, it's meaningful. And so we were like, okay, Dead Kennedys wins. All right, we're going to buy more punk music. And so, yeah, TW started, he got me more into like, he introduced me to like Consolidated and Crass and all those kind of bands. And then we became like, we showed up the next summer at summer camp and we're like vegetarian. We're, got patches on our whatever jackets or whatever. And we're listening to punk now. And then, but then he actually ended up moving closer to DC. He lived in Arlington and then he became friends with the Reston scene as well. So that was right when Avail had like Brian as a singer and they were in Reston and there was there's awesome bands there, like Remission was an awesome band. And then like we would go see Fugazi. Oh, I forgot then like my first punk show was, we went to go see GBH at the old 930 club, like real old 930 club. I'm like 14, 15 years old and I'm walking into this, this is like after we were like, oh, we're punk, we're walking into the show. I mean, we didn't dress any different. TW's mom dropped us off and we're walking this show and there's like all like skinheads all around. And at the time in DC, there was this like head of the skinheads was like this black woman, Lefty. And she was like, she comes up to our friend Caleb. He like came down. He was living in Philly, and he came down to go to the show with us. And we just walked up. We're like walking up to this 9:30 club with our tickets in our hand. Like, ooh, we're little goofy boys going to this show. Woo! Here's our tickets. And she just comes up and like, I think she had a cane or something, hit the ticket out of his hand, and then steps on it with her boot. And she was like, whoever gets it, gets it. And we basically like shit our pants. Like we were like,
Wow.
what is happening? And so, but then one of the skinheads were like, oh, they're just kids, Lefty, leave them alone. And so she was like, okay, and like walked away, and we just picked up the ticket, went into the show. And then I'm in my first, like, I'm seeing people with like green mohawks that are, 2 feet high, like all this craziness in this club. And I remember like the mosh pit started, and there was a guy with like these inch spikes on his leather jacket, and I just got rammed right in the back of this guy.
Oh,
And it was like an Iron Maiden, where like, I remember one of the spikes like went into my chin. I was just like, I was like stuck to this guy, but it was just the energy and just amazingness of it. I was hooked. But then, so then more. We would go to like Fugazi shows. We'd go to Positive Force shows, and it was all. Oh, and like the small town that I was raised in was called Cat Harpin, Virginia, which is just outside of Manassas, and so I became friends with like the Manassas punk kind of folks, and that was they like. My friends, I ended up playing like high school friends, John and Marie, I ended up playing in Rob Roz with, but like John was in a band called Hugal. It was Laugh backwards. And then he ended up being in Hoes Got Cable with all these Manassas folks and Richmond folks. And then because I knew TW and TW knew the Reston folks, I all of a sudden became like the bridge between the Manassas Reston folks. And then they started playing shows together. And, but then, it was just awesome. It was like, we were off to the races as far as like, how exciting it was and amazing punk rock was.
Was Rob Roz the first band you played in?
No. So I got a guitar for like, I was never musical. I got a guitar for graduating from high school, and I went off to college with this acoustic guitar. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. But when I was in college, there was like all this kind of this early 90s, like kind of conscious hip hop rap going on. And my best friends at the time, my freshman year, were really into rap. So I ended up being in a rap band, and I was like an MC. And it was just very like a political rap band. I don't know, it was called Ask Why or Die.
Wait, so you're an MC, you're actually rapping?
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
And it was so like it was really interesting when so then the next band I was in was Maximillian Colby. And actually Drew Ringo from Maximillian Colby was in my rap band for a while, as the bass player. And it was like an awesome. My JMU scene was amazing because it was just a bunch of. We called ourselves like the Freak Posse, and like we were just and we're all still friends. There's like a Facebook group that we communicate on, and like it was very eclectic group of people. But since it was JMU at the time was just such a small school, we all just kind of gravitated to each other. So you'd have like hippies, punks, whatever, all together. And it's like, hey, you're different. Come hang out. And so, it was just, and then like my rap band, like opened a show for Bikini Kill and Nation of Ulysses. Like at one point. Yeah. At this house called the Corn Rocket House, which my friend Billy was in a band called Corn Rocket. And so, it was just, that was, so the rap band went for a bit, and then Maximillian Colby started, around my junior year of college, and I was so bad. I was like playing like one note on the guitar, but we were so like excited about being in a band that we just practiced like 4 times a week. We were just so, into it, and we were, the like Drive Like Jehu was a big influence, Lint, Heroin, like all these. We were trying to, thread the needle, Hoover, like all these bands that we were so amazed by that. Yeah, it was just exciting time. And so I really spent that year just finally learning how to play, guitar basically.
Yeah, well, having listened to the Max Colby discography, it sounds like you definitely learned it.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, because it's great stuff. But you know what? I'm curious. First, let me say this. I love the sound of this whole scene and everyone together. The Freak Collective, is that what you called it?
Yeah, it's like I think that we were like the freshman freak posse, because there was like this whole idea of like all these freaks were coming in and for like the new year or whatever. But then it just ended up being like, I forget, we just call ourselves like the Freak Posse or something. And yeah.
It just sounds like a nice mix of people, different bands, different types of bands, different shows, which is great. And this whole scene is something I'm kind of fascinated by. I'm talking Maximillian Colby, Drive Like Jehu, Sleepytime Trio,
yeah,
Hoover, like all those types of bands. Because when I came up, I was going to hardcore shows exclusively, basically.
Right.
And it was like the crossover stuff that was blowing up in 98, 99, Cave In, Converge, Dillinger Escape Plan, Botch, all that.
Yes.
And you're familiar with hardcore shows. It's very regimented. This is what you do. This is what you don't do. This is what you dress. This is how you dress. And everything outside of that is stupid. And it's not like anybody sits you down and says all this, but that's just the mindset you end up in, right?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of fascinated by this whole world of music you're operating in and what it's like and how it functions. So what are those shows like? How are the people? Is there any of that weird like proto emo, like crying and throwing yourself on the ground and like all that stuff?
Yeah, there was that. But yeah, we actually those shows at JMU were all like whatever. Like we would play at a farmhouse. Like, and I remember like Bikini Kill came back and played there's like pictures of them playing this farmhouse.
Wow.
At JMU, and like during the day, and where my rap band played again, and it was just, yeah, it was very supportive, an amazing scene. But it's interesting because like even the punk rock kind of scene, and definitely punk rock hardcore, kind of all of a sudden was like the same thing. At least talked about the same thing, but there were these weird shows. Like I remember Sleepytime played a show in Norfolk once, and it seemed like it was the band before us was a very like almost New York style hardcore band. And I remember the singer like telling the crowd, he's like, "All right, we got to keep the energy up. Let's go." Like very like, intense about it. And then we get up there being like, maybe we face the crowd, maybe we don't. I don't know. And then do our spazzy, hardcore version of whatever we're doing. And yeah, sorry, yeah, I don't know what I was saying about that, but just that, yeah, they're all different. I think so when you mentioned the crying thing, I remember playing like a fest in Ohio, and the other guys at Sleepytime would remember it better than me, but there was like a real emotional roller coaster going on at this fest, and people were there can remember it. Like people were falling down crying, like before like the other bands, like they couldn't even play. They were like, and then we just were like, we got on there and we were like, we're just gonna rock, we're just gonna go off, because I feel like this needs to happen. There's all this. That's what, for me, the music always has been, is like there's a need to release energy, like there's a, like my wife, like never, like she's always been, she's never been like she's into alternative music, indie music and all that stuff, but she's never really understood Sleepy Time or whatever until finally she saw us at one of the reunion shows, and she saw how crazy it was, and like people just going off and like, and jumping around and like, and she was like, oh, I get it now.
It's a pure energy thing, like you described at that first show, where you got a spike in your chin and it's scary and you don't know what's going on and you got hooked. That's the same exact thing that happened to me, but different show and different bands. And you just, like you, I just got hooked on it right away.
Yeah, exactly. And those like Fugazi shows or Avail shows were all just jumping as one, like it felt at times. And, it's just like it's a release. And, especially like, I'm not sure what you are, but I'm a Western white male pent up with this modern society. Right. And this was like a young man's release, as far as like, oh, you can express your emotions. I was just talking to my friend Jonathan today about it, like how, like, it's funny because he played drums in Sleepy Time, and like one time I remember at a show, I turn around and I just see he's not even playing drums anymore. He's just punching the wall, and I'm like, what is happening? But it was awesome. It was just incredible. But it was just like, where else do you get to, for us at the time, we're not going to talk about our feelings like, we should, like, we're going to just, go up on stage and trash our instruments as the way of getting this out.
Exactly. I mean, same story for me. And I would imagine with a Marine lawyer father, you needed to go outside the house to find some kind of outlet. Oh yeah.
Emotions are, they are not allowed, right? Like it was definitely like, you fall down, well, hey, get back up. What are you still doing on the ground? Like, that's the mentality, right? And it's typical for our generation, their generation. So I don't fault them for that, but it's definitely not how, like, I want to raise my kids. Like, and thankfully my wife was not raised that way, has taught me to be like, oh, okay. My kid fell down on the bike path the other day, my youngest, and he was just crying, and I went and hugged him and like, oh, you're okay. Hey, it's all right. It's tough. I've fallen down a lot on my bike. And just with that hugs and that, like, he's back up and going like right away, instead of like, there's this idea that, oh, if you coddle somebody, they're not going to be able to do it, keep going, but, or like not have independence, but it's just, it's bullshit. Like, you just, we definitely need more of that in the world. And it took me a long time to sort of work through all that stuff to figure that out.
No, 100%. Growing up, for me, it sounds like for you too, it was just, I don't know, there were times where I asked for help and it was just like, oh, what do you want me to do? Get over it. Go back to work, deal with it. And that can cause problems, I've found.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially when you feel like, you shouldn't have emotions, or you should detach from your emotions. Years of going through it and actually also like, working it out on stage, you realize the emotions are all there still. It's just that you tried to detach from them, but they're going to come out anyway. And I, thank God for the music scene, at least allowed me some kind of outlet.
That's good. Did any of your early bands do any like crazy crying circles or any of that stuff that was going on?
No, we never did those. It's like, it's interesting because, I think of each of my bands as having kind of like a vibe and kind of an like Maximillian Colby was like, oh, we're college kids who are doing this hardcore punk thing, but it's a little arty, and like, we're just trying to, and then it's moody. but then Sleepytime, Drew started it with the idea, like I wasn't in Sleepytime at the beginning. I like joined like 6 months in or so. And so they were a trio in the beginning. And then, but like he started it with like, oh, we're just going to rock. And then when I joined, I started like, oh, well, I'm going to bring a little more melody with the songs I write, but still have that mentality like of like, this is going to be a little more fun, but it still was intense. Like the idea of it was like, and Drew would talk about it too. Like all we have to do is hit the brakes. Like we go completely insane, but then completely quiet for like 1 second and then bust into it again. And then people think you know what you're doing. You know? And then, yeah, like, I don't know, then moved on to, did Robbins, which was just like, that was like it was awesome to be totally out of my comfort zone with like more electronic, but still punkish kind of. And I learned so much musically from John and Marie and, trying to, sing more operatic kind of stuff. But yeah, like, I don't know. Oh, and I totally forgot about Men's Recovery Project, which is just a ridiculous band.
You actually performed in that band, yes?
Yeah, exactly.
Were you a guitar player?
No, I was a bass player.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had not heard of that band before researching you. And boy, that is a interesting band. Very cool. Like, I mean, being out on tour with them must have been a trip, right? Because
oh, yes.
Like you have to be peculiar to write and create that kind of art.
Yeah. I mean, I only got to be on a couple albums, and then like, so once Sleepytime really started taking off in like 97, I couldn't do Men's Recovery. And then when they wanted to tour again and we went to Japan, like I started back up again in like 2001. And then, yeah, that was like just a few tours where actually the Robbins were basically like, because John was, so Sam and Neil are, the singer and guitarist for Men's Recovery Project, and John Skritza, the drummer, who was also in Robbins with me. When we did like the later stuff, early 2000s, was Marie from Robbins joined us. So it was basically Robbins playing with Sam and Neil in the front. But it was, I mean, Sam and Neil are just characters. I mean, they're Sam McFeeters, he was in Born Against, and Neil, I think he was in Born Against for a little bit, and Lifeblood and other bands like New York hardcore. But then they got in this really quirky, like, music.
Yeah, I can't imagine New York hardcore guys starting Men's Recovery Project. That's like, that makes it even better.
Yeah, totally. Like it was a complete 180 and like a kind of rejection of everything, basically.
I was listening to it earlier, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like listening to the song and there's all this weird stuff going on and I'm like, all right, this is cool. And then I hear some fucked up sound and I'm like, what the fuck is that? And it was the song. There was like something,
Yeah.
It was like something in the background of the song that scared me. And I was like, that's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, it was so fun. But also it was just a clusterfuck every time we were on tour. Like always something would go wrong. Like, there was I don't think I've ever told this story where, we were playing, I think Memphis or something. And, it was some kind of restaurant that we're playing with sit down tables, and we're in the back getting ready to come out, and we are wearing, like, the whole tour, we're wearing these little boy sweaters that are just like, basically showing off our midriffs. And I have a statue of David Mass. John has a mask that is like a woman's red high heel shoe. and Neil has a gimp mask, and Sam is just tapes up his nose, so his like nose is just sticking up like a pig, I guess. And there's this like maybe 3 guys, like people eating their dinners, and then there's 3 guys in front of the stage just screaming like NPR, NPR, and we were like, that's not even the right initials. It's MRP. And so we come out and we start playing, and Sam just immediately in the first song just comes and just takes out a table of like diners, like the people are having their dinner, and like he just knocks the whole table over. There's 2 guys who are running the place and own it, I guess, and one of the guys comes over and just picks up Sam and throws him out of the club, like. And then
what a great show.
Yeah. Then he comes back to the behind the bar, and he didn't know that it was Sam, or that it was the singer. And the other guy was like, hey, you just threw out the singer. And not that this should have mattered. I'm happy they threw him out. Like, I thought it was hilarious. But so then the guy is like, oh, shoot. And like runs out to get Sam. And Sam it just is scared this guy is going to beat him up, so he just takes off running, like. And so this guy is chasing him through the streets of Memphis, like he's like, come back here, and he's like, no, like, running away.
It's like a cartoon. How amazing.
And then we just keep playing. We're like 4 or 5 songs of this, and like Sam finally runs out of breath. He's he's like holding up his hand, and he's like, stay back. The guy's like, no, I want you to come back and finish the show. And he's like, really?
What are those guys up to these days? I can't imagine they're accountants now or something.
Oh yeah, so Sam actually, he's a writer. He's got a few books out. He lives in LA. And then Neil is in Providence. I'm pretty sure he's in Providence. And he's got like a t-shirt like company. He makes t-shirts, but he also does a lot of screen printing. I've got like one of his screen prints on my wall at home, which is really funny too. Like Neil has a very distinctive voice. It's like he's just like, hey Dave, how you doing? And so I bought this screen print from him, and during one of it, he did a show, and he was telling me how the screen print is like he does like a very like line kind of drawing art, and it's just like kind of tubes coming from the sky, and there's like little round spheres like almost hitting like a desert landscape. And so he had done this opening where the woman who was like curating the show was like, oh, and now we see Neil's artwork here. He obviously, this is a take on the Gulf War, and these are the bombs dropping, and Neil's just like, no. It's just some art, lady. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Those guys are on a different level. Just looking at some of the videos online and some of the music, it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and it's really kind of funny because I never got a good sense of like they kind of took themselves seriously, and then and mostly didn't. But I never got the sense of like they played their cards close to their chest, as far as like, because there would be all this like, oh, we need to practice, we need to get ready for the show and do all this stuff, and like have like the sequencers and everything all set up, and Neil would, but then we would practice maybe once or twice like before a tour, but then they would be all gung ho, and then we'd go play the show, and like Sam and Neil would just be like doing those things that just would potentially destroy the show, but John and I would just keep playing. Like we just had a great time. Like I think in any other band that was like, oh, we're trying to make it or do something with this, you'd be like upset. But for us, it was just a spectacle. like, and we had like the front row seats, we were like, this is amazing.
So you're playing in Men's Recovery Project. Did Maximillian Colby come after that?
We were doing that. Maximillian Colby was before and then during.
Okay.
And then Sleepytime started where I started in the band, like right before. The bass player for Maximillian Colby died in 95. But I had done like some tours with Sleepytime. But Maximillian Colby had planned on doing a split 7-inch with Action Patrol, but unfortunately never got to happen.
So Max Colby was together. Bob Baynor is the bassist for anyone who doesn't know, who sadly passed. So did that band end after he died?
Yeah, exactly.
So you just decided that was it?
Yeah, I mean, it just wouldn't have been the same. I would love to play those songs again, and I still, Tom and I, the drummer, Tom Richards, the drummer, and I still text every now and then, and he's a great guy. He's out in California. But like, yeah. And of course, I went on with Drew to play in Sleepytime and Regents. But yeah, it just, Tom went to law school, and, it just didn't seem right without Bob,
So there has been discussion of maybe playing those songs again someday.
Yeah. We've hinted around about it. They have a lot of meaning for me. I don't know. It'd have to do it the right way. And, I'd want some, I don't know. I've got so much going on with my regular life, and then doing other stuff, that it's hard to imagine trying to figure it out. But
right.
I don't know.
Has there been offers over the years? I
don't know if there have been offers for shows, but I don't know if those have ever been like, oh, we don't know that you're not a band anymore.
Yeah.
But Drew and I have talked about it. But yeah, I don't know. I just went up for Drew's, he had his 50th birthday party recently up in Philly, Drew Ringo. And like, we talked about it some then, but I have like all the material for another Regents record, or I don't know what it's going to be. Like 3 songs are ones that I recorded with Jonathan in Sleepytime, and we had talked about doing a Sleepytime record, but I don't know if we'll ever get around to that. So, and then I also have this other, on my 50th birthday, I did this little thing that was called Buried Show Pony. That was like just a hardcore song that I did with Jason Hammaker and Ben Davis. And yeah, and I don't know if it'll be that. I'm not sure.
You've got a lot on your plate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, we didn't even get to Bats and Mice yet.
Oh yeah. And
but we're gonna get there though. We're gonna get there. But sure. I wanted to ask a question. About Bob, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
I've heard you tell the story. He contracted spinal meningitis in jail and died.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about spinal meningitis. Like, is that like you just get it and then you're dead soon after? Like, is that what happened?
Well, I think you can, and we all, like his friends, were taking drugs to protect ourselves after the fact. But I don't think like anybody knew like that's what was happening. And so, he was in Richmond at the time, and he died. Like, he was just getting sicker. And so Sleepytime had come through, played a show in Richmond, and I saw him at the show. And he just had all these sores all over his body. And he was, and then it was like maybe 2 weeks later, he told me the story of like what had happened. Like he was drunk at a bar, and I know the bar well. It had this big glass window, and he across the street you could see a 7-Eleven, and he saw some bike cops just beating up this homeless guy, and he was like, "Oh, I'll go out and steal one of their bikes as like a way to get them away from this guy." And as he tried to, he's drunk, he tried to bike away. The kickstand was down. He couldn't, he just ended up crashing or something. And then the cops just beat the shit out of him, threw him in jail. And we were told, like, oh, after the fact, like, spinal meningitis runs rampant in, Richmond jails, like, as if that was a okay thing to be happening. Like, why aren't they on the drugs? But like, and then, but no one knew, that's what was happening. He was like, oh, he's got a flu or something. And then it just went downhill fast.
That's a shame. Yeah. And it was there like a lawsuit or anything like that? It makes you wonder too. It's like, the cops beat him up. Like, I don't know. Maybe there's more that we don't know. You just don't know, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't there. I wasn't living in Richmond at the time. And, it's just a tragic thing. I mean, we went to his, I don't know if his parents really wanted to do anything. We went to his funeral, and it was very odd because, like, obviously his parents didn't really, like they seemed very Christian, and they were like doing this very Christian, not that I'm not against that, but but it wasn't Bob. It was like a funeral that was very like the preacher was like, oh, the part of you all that loved Bob was the Jesus in him. And I was like, I was like, okay. Yeah.
Very traditional Christian funeral.
Yeah. And it was almost like, it was all these punk kids just sitting in this church, and it was almost like trying to reach out to us and it's just, I remember like we all went somewhere afterward, and that was like the real funeral for us, where we talked about him.
How old was he?
Gosh, I guess probably 21, 22 or something.
That
maybe.
Young. Oh, yeah. What a shame. Oh,
I know. Maybe a little older. Maybe he was, maybe it was 20, that was 95. So yeah, maybe he was like 25 or so, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I've been to his grave, and it's in Chesapeake, Virginia. I didn't even go for the longest time. I was like, and then finally, like maybe a couple of years ago, I found it.
How did it feel to go there after all that time?
It was pretty, it's intense. I mean, like when I first, I don't know how, I've had other people I know die, not as, I don't know if as close as Bob, but with Bob, I just was so in shock. Like, I just was like, this isn't true, was my first sort of reaction. Like, I just kept kind of repeating that over and over again. And then, finally, I don't know, it just, going to his grave, it just still seems so like I just can't even, like, he was such a great guy and just a loving guy, but I'm just like, what it would have been like, to just see him older.
That's the worst part about deaths like Bob, or with someone that young under those kind of circumstances, because you're like, oh, what if he would have just stayed in the bar? What if this wouldn't have happened? What if they would have caught the meningitis? Like, he could have lived a full life, and it's just a shame. Yeah,
I actually got a really funny story about Bob. If you want to, if you'll indulge me.
Please, yeah.
So this will maybe give insight on like how, he, I don't know, his personality, I guess, but Maximillian Colby was practicing at my parents' house, and my parents' house is out in the middle of nowhere, Cat Harbin, Virginia, freaking horse farms, and he was living in Richmond at the time. He was just going to spend the night, and we were going to practice again the next day. And so Tom and Drew end up going home, and because they were living closer to my house. And then, but my friends, John Skritza, Billy Hunt, and Dave Hogg all came over as like, oh, we're all going to just hang out. But Bob is in just such a like, this is boring, like, what are we doing out here in this, this like nothing area or whatever. Like, and we were like, oh, you want to have a good time? Like, we're going to take you out. And so we like grabbed him and like put him in, for some reason, my girlfriend at the time had given me a green corduroy, like velour tracksuit. And so we just stuffed Bob in this tracksuit, and he's like being good natured about it. I mean, totally, it's just we're having fun, and he's laughing along with us. And then I put my dad's my dad was a Marine aviator actually, so I put his helicopter helmet on him, and then make him wear my dad's golf shoes. And so then we go driving in John's car. I'm in the front with John, and Billy and Dave are sitting on the sides of Bob. He's in the back middle seat. They're just like, we're like, oh wait, we're going to do something fun. Let's go to Denny's. And I brought along this like a lute, like lyre, whatever, like those like, kind of strumming little small harps,
Yeah.
And so we're like, hey, you're going to go into Denny's. This is like late at night. And you're going to ask them for an application. And so he goes in the front door. And I was like, oh, and we're going to all be, and because he's like, I'm not going to go in there by myself. And I was like, no, we're all going to go in there together. And we're going to be behind you like a Greek chorus. And everything you say, I'm going to play the harp. And then we'll sing it.
Wow.
So he goes into the Denny's and he's like, oh, comes up to the front and he's like, can I have an application? And I go, bring, and we all sing, can he have an application? And the woman behind the counter is like, just like totally freaked out. But someone way in the place went silent. But someone way in the back was just like, give him a job. And so she like tears off an application from like an application pad. Like it was just like a sheet, and hands it to him. And then he goes, should I just drop this back by? And I go, bling, should he just drop this back by? And he's like, and she was like, sure. And so then we left. And then we were like, oh, we got to do this somewhere else. And we go to 7-Eleven. And this is really funny because he's wearing these golf shoes. And we're like walking the 7-Eleven, and like he falls down basically like in front of the counter. And the guy at the counter like looks up just for a second and then just looks back down. Like he's like not happy. Like we are there. And he goes, and then Bob goes, hey, can I have an application? And I go, ring, can he have an application? And the guy just goes, he's looking down, he won't look at us, and he just goes, no, sir.
Wow.
And we're like, oh, then Bob is like, oh, what do I do? And he like turns around, he's like, look at like what my scene partner messed up the line. What do we do now? And I was just like, just say it anyway. Say it anyway. He's like, oh, should I just drop this back by? And I go, bring, should he just drop this back by? The four of us behind him, and the guy's just like, no, sir. And then we just leave and we go to Taco Bell, and that was our evening. And he was laughing and having such a great time, and like he was such a good sport about it, and he was like, yeah, this is fun. Like we can have fun.
I love it. That's like the same dumb shit we used to do, like Denny's and, like just these stupid pranks. And that's what you do when you're young.
Exactly. And You're like, I don't know, you're just looking for something different.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So Sleepytime Trio.
Yeah.
Now, this is a band I love and have listened to for a long time. Wait, so Jay Robbins, did he record that record, the blue one?
That became like the compilation of everything, but he recorded like most of that stuff. But that was like our discography was the blue one. But yeah, the original like LP he recorded.
Wow. See, I never knew that.
And that we were his first band that he recorded professionally.
Yes. Now that I heard that too, and that blew my mind. Wow, what a first record, right?
I know. And he was a hero, I'm sure he wouldn't want me to hear it because he's very modest and like when I've talked to him about like, hey, I was like 14, 15 looking at you up on stage and now I'm, recording this record with you, but also on the Regents record, he was the bass player and he recorded that one. And yeah, it's amazing. Like, and the first record, that was like an 8-track at his house. And it's interesting because that was like a record where the engineer understood us. Like the guy who recorded Maximillian Colby was just some rock guy in Richmond. We didn't know what we were doing. He didn't know who I was, or what we were. But that I felt like that turned out well. But with Jay, I mean, he just gets you, and then also he's he never like obviously is he's into the bass. Like he will not he'll let the bass be an instrument that everybody wants to hear too, so yeah.
Was he in Regents? Like, would he perform out with you guys?
No, he never did. We went to the studio and we were just like in between bassists and we didn't know. And then I think like, we were like, hey, do you want to do it? And he was like, at first, like, I'm not sure. And then he was like, okay. And so, yeah, it was awesome for him to do it. Yeah.
So Sleepytime Trio, we're active from what, 97 to when?
More like 95 to 97 were like our main kind of years. And then like 99 we like did some reunions, and then we've just done stuff over the years. It's never been like a thing like I mean, we're all still great friends. I think we just love each other. We're like brothers. So yeah, it's just if life was different where it wasn't so crazy, then we'd all lived in the same town, I'm sure we'd play together.
When's the last time the band performed?
We did a reunion for like that, our like Freak Posse, like and JMU had a reunion, and we just played this bar with other punk bands from our JMU days, like Corn Rocket, Hatchet Wound, Sexual Milkshake, some of the one. And that was like 2015, I think.
Has there ever been like an official Sleepytime Trio reunion? Like we're announcing it and we're promoting it and we're gonna like do it and have a bunch of people come out?
Yeah, we did. Like we've done some like surprise stuff, but then we did one. I know we'd done a tour or two where it was like a reunion. And then we played like the fest in Gainesville where it was announced. We actually played that was like, I don't know how many years ago. I'm not sure. Maybe my mind is blank. Probably like 2012 or 2011 or something.
Okay. See, I'm wondering where I've been the whole time. I would have liked to seen one of these.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about we almost played a show this summer in DC, but it just couldn't get it all together. Like, yeah, I mean, it's not something that we would, if the right opportunity comes up, we would do it and we could all make our schedules work, but it's ridiculous. And we're all, Ben and I live close to each other, but, Jonathan's in Richmond and Drew's in Philly. So it's just tough to make happen.
Yeah. Plus, everyone's older, different priorities, different bands, different stuff going on.
Exactly.
It can be difficult.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. I mean, that's how like this Bats and Mice took, basically 10 years to finally, with, Ben and I both having kids and, just, yeah, it's difficult with life getting in the way.
Right. So, okay. So, Sleepytime Trio.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about when and how does that end initially? And then how do we decide to segue into Bats and Mice? Because, Max Colby and Sleepytime Trio, you can draw the comparison there and you can kind of hear like the similarities. But
Yeah.
Sleepytime Trio to Bats and Mice. Now, Bats and Mice is a departure. It's more accessible.
Yes.
It's not like the poppy, sing-songy, pop-punk, emo type stuff. I don't even know that I'd classify it as emo. Maybe, but it's like a cool independent rock sound. Let's say like a mainstream sounding Sleepytime Trio almost, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, like, I've tried to like figure out like, oh, what kind of musician am I?
Yeah.
And I just, at one point in my life, I was just like, oh, I'm just, because there were like Bats and Mice songs that came out of me that I was just like, what is this? Like, is this too mainstream? Is this accessible or is it not accessible? And then I gave up. I was like, this is just what's happening. This is what I'm writing. And I finally just was like, why do I have to figure it out?
Right.
And so, yeah, we were just, I think, there is some idea like, oh, post-punk, like you're going to mellow out a little bit. So that is some of it, I guess. But to me, it was just like, it made sense. It didn't like, I remember like, I was actually talking to Ben about this the other day because I was in the practice space, in the Rob Ross practice space, and I was writing some of these Bats songs. And then at some point I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what is, I don't understand what I'm supposed to do here. And then I just played a riff that was on one of our first songs. And I was just like, oh, and then it like the dam broke. Like it was just like this, like, oh, okay, now I can write the rest of this record. Like it just was like, oh, now this is what it is. And that's all it's been to me. Like I've never, like I pick up the guitar and I just start playing. Like I've never thought about like, oh, I want to do this. I want to, like it should sound like this. It's always been just like, oh, here's a riff that comes out, and how do we make this into a song?
So it's just the next evolution in what you're doing.
Yeah. And without any like, oh, I mean, obviously it is more accessible, but it was just like, I didn't think about it like that. I thought about it like, oh, yeah, this is, like you said, yeah, like an evolution. And then, but I was doing Rob Ross at the same time, and it just, both bands like scratched an itch that I had. So yeah, I just let it be, like. That
makes sense. I'm curious about everybody's process. And yeah, it's the same thing for me. I've started bands where I'm like, okay, I want to sound exactly like X band. Or yeah. I join a band and okay, that's what I'm writing now. And I started a band or tried to start a band right before the pandemic, and it sounded like Sleepytime Trio and that kind of stuff. And that's just the natural evolution of what happened with those three people writing that music. I actually tried to cover Rock Candy, the Sleepytime Trio song, nice. And I have no idea what's going on in that song. I don't think I'm even coming close, but I did my imitation of it, and that was enough.
You just got to play the E chord a lot. That's
Is that in standard tuning?
Yeah, totally.
I
think we only have one song that's in D, but then that might have been Max Colby. I'm not sure. I never drop tuned, I don't think, and unless I drop tuned maybe in Max Colby once, but yeah, all my stuff's been standard, like, and which is a shame. Like I feel like, but also I'm like, oh, I was thinking about this the other day. Actually, I thought about it because I listened to your Kurt Ballou interview, and he talked about the different tunings, and I was like, man, that's a whole world that I need to explore someday. Like I haven't gotten there yet.
You know what? If and when it's supposed to happen, it will, right? Because for years and years, I only played in drop D and sometimes E standard. And I was like, God, guys talk about all these tunings and tunings that they invent and all these crazy, like Kurt has like 5 guitars on stage. And I'm like, I feel like I'm not reaching my potential here, right?
Right.
Like there's all these tunings that I don't even know about.
Yeah.
And then now I'm in a new band and we're playing in 3 different tunings. I have 3 different basses and 3 different tunings. So it happened just like that. So
right. Yeah.
if it's going to happen for you, it'll happen.
I would love to hear your bands.
We're going to talk. We're going to talk.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But, okay. So we've got Bats and Mice started.
Yes.
We're doing that, right?
That was like 99. It was me, Jonathan, and Ben from Sleepytime. Drew had moved to Seattle, and Bats and Mice was just like, oh, let's just go record a 7-inch. And then, but we never played out live with that version of the band because Jonathan was so busy with Engine Down. It just was like on, like, oh, let's just record this and see what happens. And then Darren and Ash from 400 Years joined the band when Jonathan was like, I'm too busy. You guys should do this, but I can't do it. And so then our first album was with Darren and Ash, and then we actually toured a bunch. And then Darren and Ash moved on to work on other projects. There was a band called Zeta Male that Darren was in with Ash for a bit, and then we went through a couple different drummers. We landed on Luke Herbst he's from Chapel Hill area, now in Pittsburgh. He recorded with us for our second EP, 7-inch, and then which actually had a song from that I had written during the LP days as like started the EP. And then we toured Europe on that. And then pretty much Luke kind of bowed out, I guess around 2008, 2009. I'm not sure. And Mark Oates started playing drums with us. And it's been that kind of configuration. We recorded our first the first tracks for this album that's coming out hopefully soon in 2012 with Brian McTurnan, or like in Baltimore. And then that was 2012, and Ben had his first kid, I think, or second or third kid during that. And then I had, my kids, and I moved to, I was living in Alabama at the time. And then my wife and I had a kid and moved to Virginia Beach and then out to California. And it's just been this crazy, and during that, from like 2007 to 2013 or 14 or so, I was doing Regents as well. And then Rob Ross also was like 96 to 2007. And then, so the Bats and Mice, this record has just been sitting there. Like, we've played a few shows, we've played some of the songs out, but now finally we are finishing the record up with this guy Al from Warrior Sound in Chapel Hill, and we have half of it completely done, and we're hopefully going to get the last final mixes in the next week or so.
So it's in process. Do we have a name yet? Do we have a release date? Are we that far along yet, or no?
No release date. The name of the record is P.S. Seriously, like as and as if at the bottom of a letter. And with the artwork is done, so that's always been a hard thing to get done before the album is done. But I'm really excited about all of it.
Yeah, this is exciting. I mean, the last thing you put out was the single in 2010, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I forgot to mention that. So then so before Mark Oates, Jonathan came back to play with us after Engine Down was done. And, but then he was just like so busy with work and other stuff that he was like, I can't do much. And I was like, why don't we just record a single? And so that was with Jonathan that we did that, and that was called Back in Bat.
Yes.
And then Mark joined after that.
So it sounds like you've never stopped performing.
No, I haven't. And then, I play drums in a band called Sweatpants. That is like, I describe it as like a punk rock Warren Zevon with like my really good friends that I met in Baltimore, Adam and Jamie. And it's just like a fun band that we're actually going to go on. We're playing like 3 or 4 shows in August in upstate New York and in Vermont. That's where Adam lives, in upstate New York. And I think we have like songs on MySpace or something. But yeah, like nothing ever put out, but it's just a fun band. Like it's just we would just play like bars in Baltimore, and I just love hanging out with those guys. So it's just another, like, it just scratches another itch that I have, which is like, I always wanted to be able to play drums. And I started playing drums with them in like 2007, and I was terrible. Actually, it's funny. Like we shared my first practice space was Sweatpants and Beach House. That like Poppy kind of, not Poppy, but like kind of, they're pretty big now, right? Supposedly.
Beach houses, yeah, they're huge.
Yeah. We shared a practice space in Baltimore, and they were totally nice, awesome folks. And then, but I was so bad at drums. I'm still not that great, but it's just fun, And then, I actually I played a few shows locally with other parents from my kids' school, where we do 90s cover band, where we played like the festival at my kids' school, and I played drums in that. And like the only thing that probably is worth mentioning there is like we play Say It Ain't So by like Weezer and songs like that.
Do the kids think it's cool? I remember my school had a talent show, and some of the teachers covered Brown Eye Girl. And like, I think I was torn. I was like, oh, this is corny, old people playing old people music. But I think part of me thought it was cool too, because it was like the English teacher who you could kind of tell was high sometimes. Like,
yeah, I think it seemed that way, but it was hard to tell. But then I love that my kids seem fascinated. Like I've never pushed music on them at all, but my youngest. It's interesting, like my youngest just gravitates to the drums, and he plays drums all the time now. Like he just goes, like I have an acoustic set in the garage and I have an electronic set in my office, and he just goes and bangs on them all the time. And I can tell, I'm like, oh, he's actually playing beats now. And I'll be like, hey, do you want me to teach you something? And he's like, no, I'm just having fun. And then my oldest we have a piano, and he just goes and plays the piano all the time. It's amazing. Like, my wife has taught him more than I have. Like because I can't read notes at all. And he's like, he's great at it. I couldn't want anything more than that, because my playing has all been just self-taught.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know the name of one chord still.
Right.
Like I can just like put my fingers on the frets and make shit happen. Yeah. And that's what, that's what I tell people. And the punk rock ethos too is like, you can make noise, it's just strumming just try it. Do you ever show your kids a Sleepytime Trio or anything like that and say, hey, look at what I used to do?
I've played some. They're not too into Sleepytime, because they're like, anytime like I play like hard music, like they're like, like I played Converge the other day because of that, listening to your interview with Kurt, and I was like, and they were like, no, stop that. But
Converge is particularly brutal. I used to go to parties with like normal people, and I would take over the stereo and put on the most brutal.
Yeah,
Like
nice,
I remember
yeah.
going to a party with normal people, and I put on Converge covered a Negative Approach song. I don't remember which one, but I put it on, and the look on people's faces was just like they were not ready for that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It is intense.
Yeah.
And, but it's funny because like I played them clowncore, and I don't know if you've heard clowncore.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They love it. And they like ask for that all the time. And I guess because there's like, and they actually asked for Men's Recovery Project because there's some wackiness about it that kids love, right? Which I appreciate.
Like clowncore, if you listen to the music, it's so out there. That's good. But then if you watch their live performances, they're mind blowing.
Oh, did you go see them?
No, but have you ever seen any of their live performances on YouTube or anything?
Yes, yeah, definitely seen those. I mean, they're amazing.
Yeah. Oh,
But
I
I
can.
know-
You know what? I can see the Men's Recovery Project Clowncore parallel now. There's like this weird artsy thing to both of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Totally. Oh, and that drummer is amazing.
unbelievable.
Yeah, so the kids are, and they're really like, I took them to the studio for finishing up the Bats and Mice record, and they had such a great time. And
That's cool.
Yeah, my oldest is like always is now like, Dad, we should record this. Let's record, so sometimes I'll, bring up Logic on my computer and we'll record a few things.
That must be nice.
Yeah, it's fun. And I struggled with it because I was like, I don't want to push anything, but I also want them to be into it. And so it's been nice to them to sort of figure it out themselves,
I think the move is you introduce, like you have it around, right? Like you play stuff, the instruments are there.
Yes.
Attraction, not promotion, right? Like you don't sit the kid down and say, here's the guitar, you're going to learn this. Cause then they're like, fuck off. I don't want to.
Yeah. That's what it is. Like, I just have the guitars. They're just sitting around. Like I'm like, hey, pick them up if you want. Like it's no restrictions on it.
Right. That's the move.
Yeah.
All of the years of you playing music. Let's talk about like end of Sleepytime Trio, beginning of Bats and Mice. Like, where are you at with this? Did you want to be a full-time touring musician and have that be your main thing? Had you graduated college? Were you thinking about having a regular job too? Like, how did you sort all of this out?
Yeah, I mean, I graduated in 94 from college, and then I got a job as a video game tester. It was like a random job that I just found in the newspaper.
What kind of games were you testing?
And it was totally like point and click, like really like budgety games where it was just like, you see a sword, like kind of like a step up from text adventure kind of games.
So like King's Quest and Myst. I mean, we probably weren't testing those games, but those type of games.
Exactly, like wannabe Myst, but
yeah,
but it, it'd be like 8 hours a day of that, and you'd have to find. You had a quota how many bugs you'd have to find in these games, but it was interesting. So I'd left, and then there would just be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna leave and go do a tour, and then come back and like, or go play these shows. And so it was a lot of jobs like that for a bit, but then I moved to Richmond permanently because I was like kind of back and forth because Men's Recovery Project was in Richmond, and then Sleepytime would practice here, there. Oh, so then I actually did AmeriCorps in Richmond for a year. I was a kindergarten assistant, and so that helped with like paying off some of college. And then that was amazing. It's like a downtown Richmond elementary school, and I was just a kindergarten assistant. A kindergarten assistant, and the kids were amazing, and it was a crazy job. And then I was also at the same time I like got a job through that where I worked at a computer lab at the Medical College of Virginia, and that's where my wife was going to school, and my future wife at the time. And We started dating in Richmond, and then so Sleepy Time, I was in Richmond, and then I remember we had kind of like our last sort of practice in Chapel Hill and before our shows, and we had talked about like, oh, we're gonna write new stuff, but it just seemed so like daunting. And I remember just like, I don't know, it just seemed like it wasn't, I don't know, anything that we were like excited about, but we were excited about playing those shows that ended up being the last shows of that kind of era, I guess. And then Drew ended up moving to Seattle, and then Jonathan and Ben and I just started jamming on stuff, and that's how that kind of started.
Did you pay attention to anything else going on in music at that time? Like 99, 2000 is the beginning of a new emo boom. There's like Jimmy Eat World popping off and Saves the Day and Newfound Glory. There's a pop punk thing happening. There's a bigger emo thing happening. Did you pay attention to that? Oh, Thursday was like another big one. Did you pay attention to any of that? Did you want to be part of any of that? Or were you guys just doing your own thing? Like, tell us about that.
Yeah, it was totally, I mean, I felt like we were just doing our own thing. Like, I didn't listen to those bands. I was more like, the bands I listened to at the time were like what inspired me for like Rob Roz. I was listening to this band that was, I don't know if you know the Ruins from Japan. They're like a kind of prog rocky kind of band. Crazy. Like it's basically like proto clowncore, but more musical and and they're very inspired by Magma, like very prog rock kind of stuff. So they had a band called Koenji that was very inspiring. And then I listened to like the Stickmen, or like this Philly kind of band that was I think in the 80s, and they are like very like a demented B-52s, and I don't know. I can't. The whole new kind of emo wave, I never really got into. Like, not that I was against it or anything, but I was just,
Yeah. No, I'm just curious. Like, basically, someone that operated outside of the musical worlds that I did, which it sounds like you did. I'm just fascinated. I like to hear different perspectives and different scenes and different experiences that I wasn't even aware of.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the time, we were doing a lot where I don't know who we would play with.
You must have played Mac Rock back in the day, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
That sounds like a place you would have been.
Yeah, definitely played Mac Rock a few times. I mean, obviously played so many JMU shows.
Did you ever get thrown on a random gig with like Poison the Well or any of the new stuff that was happening at the time? Or like a Bats and Mice Thursday random gig or anything like that?
I'm definitely aware of Thursday at the time. I don't know if we ever played together. I ended up playing Lucas Brevin ended up playing bass in Regents for a while from Thursday. So yeah. And he's in United Nations, if there is still a band. I'm not sure.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to piece it all together in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, we would play shows with like Engine Down, with other Love It bands like Fin Fang Foom, like later on, like with Haymarket Riot. We played a little tour with them, and like they had like some reunion tour. We played with Braid.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Engine Down. I could see that. Yeah, I could definitely see that pairing too. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's interesting because as far as you talked about, like, they were more like, oh, this is our day job. Like, this is our life. And I've never, like, I've been on long tours, and like the tours would pop up every now and then, but I've always had a job. After I started working at this, it was called like computer lab in at MCV, I started picking up programming. And then the whole internet thing exploded, and all of a sudden I was like writing HTML, Perl pages, like CGI stuff for freelance. and then I just started working from there where I love it. Like it's the other, like, for me, this is a great way to, have a job, have a career, have a family, have kids, and still do music.
Yes. It sounds like there's some flexibility, right? Because you've done touring. It sounds like you've done touring out of the country. You continue to play, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that, with remote work, like I've been actually working remotely since 2011. So
really?
Yeah. So COVID wasn't weird to me at all.
Yeah. I went fully remote in late 2019 and I've never looked back. COVID, not too much changed for me in terms of work. And now that I work fully remote, well, let's say 96% of the time, I can never go back. It's so great. I love it.
Yeah. I like it too. I mean, it's really helpful, to have have that flexibility, especially when you have kids, and I have the farm, and
it's just like I now that I make my own schedule. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm in front of the computer from 9 to 5 and I'm ready to go. But like I'll do stupid hours sometimes. Like I don't know, maybe I don't feel like working from 3 to 5. And then at 9 p.m., I'll be like, hey, I want to catch up on stuff. And I'll do that. Or I'll wake up at like 2 in the morning and check on something. Or I'll get started super early at 7 a.m. And then maybe from 9 to 10 a.m., I don't want to do something. So it's like, I'll do like stupid hours, but I make sure everything's done and I can kind of decide when things get done. And that I love that freedom.
Yeah, I know. And I'm happy with, like, my job is just like very flexible with, like, just like, hey, I got to go watch the kids for a few hours. And they're like, sure. And I just, make it up later or whatever.
My job did the same thing. They're like, if you got to go to a doctor's appointment or something like that, like, just do it. Just make sure everything's done.
Yeah. It's very different from my wife's life. She's always very jealous of how it's just so flexible, because she has this shift work where she has to go in and she is nonstop on her feet. Like,
oh yeah.
Like we joke about it in a dark way. Like, she's on the front lines of the apocalypse, basically, of our failing healthcare system. And, yeah, so it's just such a different world, So yeah, I count myself lucky to have that. But
at least you have the balance, right? She's on the front lines, breaking our back, but she's bringing in serious bucks, right?
Yeah.
We love that. But you're working remote, and it sounds like you're doing pretty well too. I mean, software engineer.
Yeah.
So we have the balance of the two, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and then to have this outlet for creativity, is just so, like, I can't imagine not having that as well.
Same here. I've heard you talk about it. Like, you won't start by saying, hey, I'm in a band and this is what I do. Like,
yeah.
Depending on who I'm talking to. All right, if I'm with like a straight-laced crowd, like business crowd or finance crowd, not that I hang around a lot of finance crowds, but
yeah.
I'll lead with work, right? I'm a consultant for an outsourcing firm. I do this, I do that. Yes. If I'm around more creative types, I'll lead with, I work with a record label, I do a podcast, and I'm a musician. I lead depending on what crowd I'm with.
Yeah, that makes sense. Totally.
Yeah. What about you? Will you ever lead and say, hey, I was in Sleepytime Trio and we wrote some of the best music ever?
Never. I would never do that. But yeah, it's actually kind of funny because my dad has a story where he was golfing with these two younger dudes, somehow ended up on this golf course with these guys. And then he was like, oh yeah, just talking about his son. And he was like, my son's in some band called Men's Recovery Project. And then they looked at him like, oh my God. Yeah. Like, you have no idea how, like, what craziness your son is. Like, what crazy thing he is. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard I'm a little more reserved about it. My wife will say all that stuff. Like, if we're at a party, she'll lead with that. Like, oh, here's my punk rock husband. And I'm like, oh God, you know.
I love it.
And but the fascinating thing is, like, it is a kind of an interesting conversation when you find those people who sort of understand where you're
Yeah.
coming from versus the people who are just like, what do you like? Okay, so you play covers? Like, what do you mean? Like, and where do you play? Like, oh, are you? And then when I tell them, or like, oh yeah, if, and they're like, can I hear your music? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's on all the. You can go to all the streaming things. It's on there, but I'm like, this is nothing that you've ever heard of. And I'm like, there are some people that would be like, oh, yeah, in some small little part of the world, people are like, yes, I've heard of that and I know this. But that's all, and they're like, oh, when I say, like, yeah, I've gone to Japan, I've toured Europe, I've, like, they're like, what? Like, like the concept of that is just so, like, they don't understand the DIY-ness of it all, that you can make that happen. And there's all this underground world going on versus, like, oh, if you went and toured Europe, you obviously are some big rock star.
Right. People don't understand, like you're saying, the whole DIY scene, and that there's this whole world of music that exists where regular people can go do these things, and you're not Coldplay necessarily.
Exactly. Yeah. And, there's a world that I didn't know existed when we went, and, like, the Rob Ross would play. I remember playing the show with his German band, and the German band was like, oh, you should move here. Like, you could, this could be your life. Like, you could play music. This is what we do. We get a grant from the government to play music. I'm like, holy cow. Like, it was just so, like, different mentality. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, but that whole world exists, right? There's people who appreciate the arts, or other countries that appreciate the arts in a different way than we do here.
Big time. When I heard that there's government grants and governments that actually support music in other countries that aren't here, that blew my mind. I didn't even hear about that until I started doing this podcast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, so I imagine you've talked to folks, who are just living that dream.
Yeah.
you know, and they're like, oh, look at our universal healthcare too.
Yeah. It's something we won't experience in our lifetime here, but it's something to aspire to.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's recap. Now, we have the new Bats and Mice record coming out on Love It Records, yes?
Yes, yep.
It is called P.S. Seriously.
Exactly.
And we don't know when it's coming out yet, but it is coming.
Yeah. We're just hopefully finishing it up. It's a long time coming, but yeah, it's closer than it's ever been. We've got, like, it's 10 songs. We've got 5 of them completely done. We have 5 more we're working on that just need a few more tweaks, and I'm excited about it. I
am too. What else? What other bands? Is there any other music? Is there any other live gigs or anything where we can see you?
Yeah, I don't know the names of the show or the places yet, but I'll be up in Vermont and upstate New York with Sweatpants, playing some shows there. I know Burlington is one of the, I guess, cities we're playing, but and then that's in August, like August 10th through 13th or something. And then I'm working on, so Jason Hamaker and my really good friend from college, Billy Hunt, we are working on where I play guitar, and he plays guitar too, Billy does, and Jason plays drums. Kind of a more like, Jason Hamaker described it as like a synth, like synthy, ethereal synth band meets Hatebreed.
That sounds amazing. I need to hear that.
Yeah, we've got some songs already. But yeah, that's another thing that's in the works when time permits it. But I love playing with those guys too. I love both of them. A lot of this is, it's me getting to hang out with my friends. That's what most of it is. Like I don't think I've never been in a band where it wasn't people I knew first from being friends with them.
Yeah, I like that. I'm just thinking about any band description that ends in meets Hatebreed.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to listen to it no matter what it is.
Yeah, we're still working on a name for that band. But right now we're calling it Release the Owls with an exclamation point. I don't know if that's going to stick, but then, and then I've written a few of I'm working on a solo thing. I've written a few songs for that Mark from Bats Mice is playing drums on. And I don't know that I was going to record it in, after I got back from India, but, I think I actually want to write a little bit more. I've got like 10 Regent songs, if they're Regents or Sleepytime or whatever songs that I want to put out. So I just need to record those at some point too.
Wow, so you're like a writing machine. You've just never stopped.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one, like, I think like that I was blessed with that. Like Drew and I joke about it because like Drew and I work so well together. Drew from, Sleepytime and Regents and stuff. Like he like I'm the farmer and he's the chef. Like I just produce I'm finally, like, I think with Bats and like with this record and like I'm finally, and hopefully with this newer stuff, I'm finally getting to where I can like edit myself a little bit more. But Drew is such an editor. Like he's just so good at like, getting a song to be a song. And so I've been lucky with being able to like the ideas flow from me, I guess, easily. But I have a really hard time of like with structure. It's just something I'm working on. And then I've always like, lyrically like had a hard time. Like, Ben in Bats and Mice is such a great singer and writes amazing lyrics. So like for me, my lyrics have always been a lot more cryptic. And so like now I'm trying to explore like, I want to open up more.
How was that? Is that scary at all?
A little bit. I mean, I definitely do it more on this new Bats and Mice album than I've ever done. It's a little scary, but also a little like, I'm now 51 years old and I'm feeling more like, hey, liberated, I guess, like.
Yeah, so it depends. Sometimes I write more cryptically. Sometimes it'll be a little more obvious. It just depends on what the song is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What works for it.
Exactly. Well, Dave, this has been awesome. And I've been listening to you for a long time now, and you've just created so much great music. Really looking forward to the new Bats record. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show.
And thank you. I really appreciate it.
And there you have it. Dave Nesmith. Wow. This is one of those discussions, Stacy, where I was surprised. Like, I knew Dave was in Bats and Mice and Sleepytime Trio. We know that. Those are layups. But researching him and just finding out all the stuff he's done, Regents, Maximillian Colby, who I hadn't heard before. And that was part of that whole scene with, like, Hoover and Hose Got Cable and Lincoln and all those cool kind of bands that I like. That was cool. Men's Recovery Project I had never heard of before, and that's like this weird artsy thing by some old New York hardcore dudes who were doing something new. And the stories he told about Men's Recovery Project and about Bob from Maximillian Colby when they were going to the 7-Eleven and stuff and getting job applications. Well, it was just such a great conversation, and it's so many great stories as well.
Yeah, it's crazy to see kind of the Sleepytime Trio and kind of Coalesce kind of similarities. Like they were the noisy, metally, crazy band, and then they had to deal with playing with these weird bands as well. Like we did a show in San Diego one time, and there was a performance artist that wrapped himself in barbed wire and wanted people to throw glass bottles at him.
Really?
Yeah, we played in San Diego. We played with Gehenna and 108 and Bloodlet. And then there was a performance art guy that had like barbed wire wrapped around him and then wanted people to pelt him while he was like doing stream of conscious, like spoken word stuff. It was pretty funny. And then we didn't know what the hell. I mean, I was like 19. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And we were all just like scratching our head. We went on at like 3:00 in the morning, and it was like we were all just wasted, and this guy's up there doing this, and it was odd.
Did you ever cross paths with any of Dave's bands?
No, I mean, I think we may have crossed paths with the Sleepytime Trio because I'm 100% positive that I've heard them or seen them at some point, because we've kind of traveled the same circles around the same time. So, because we were doing Coalesce in 95, 96, and 97. So that would probably line up at some point, because I know for a fact I've heard and seen the Sleepytime Trio.
Yeah, and it was interesting to hear Dave say that Sleepytime Trio was like them taking hardcore to the next level. And
Yeah.
I think that's another parallel with Coalesce, because Coalesce was doing the same thing, right? Just in a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, Jess and I had metal influences. So, we listened to Metallica and Pantera and Megadeth and stuff like that. And in our minds, we were playing a bastardized version of all those metal bands we came up with. So, like, everyone heard it, and like we told them that was our influence. It's like, yeah, we can't hear that at all. And it's one of those weird things. Like, no, we can't hear that at all. I don't know what you're talking about. So
I'm thinking that right now as you're saying it.
yeah, it's so odd that that's what we were listening to, but we sounded absolutely nothing like the bands that we thought we sounded like.
It's like such a fucked up version that it became its own good thing.
Oh yeah, it's completely distorted. So
wow, but Dave was a really nice guy, and I was happy to talk to him, and I'm excited to hear this new Bats and Mice record. I mean, the guy can't miss. So
no, and he said he's 50 now.
Yeah,
like I was feeling old at almost 48, and I was just like, man, I feel old. And he's like, I'm 50, and he's still out there killing it.
Yeah, I think the music keeps us young, Stacy. What do you think?
I think so. I mean, I may not be actively participating in it anymore, but I mean, I'm definitely, listening to new things and trying to discover new things on a regular basis.
Exactly. So let's talk about that, Stacy. You have recently left the Casket Lottery, yes?
Yes.
How long ago? How did it happen? When did it happen? Tell us the story.
It was in February, shortly after our East Coast trip with taking meds. I've been suffering with mental block and writer's block for, several years now. And I finally just came to the realization that it was more than just writer's block and mental block. It was me basically not being able to recognize who I was without it. I didn't know who I would be if I wasn't Stacy in the Casket Lottery or Coalesce. And I stayed with it because I was scared to see what that might look like. So it was less about, Nathan and the guys not getting along with me. It was more about me starting to distance myself more and more from it. And I just couldn't figure out why. And after that last trip, I just came to the realization that it just wasn't where I wanted to be anymore. And if staying with it because I didn't know who I was without it, then I was in it for the wrong reasons. So,
that it's good to have that realization. I think about that sometimes because, every minute of every day is taken up for me these days with band stuff or podcast stuff. And I always think, what if that stuff wasn't around? What would I do? Like, who would I be? But I think it's important to make that change if you realize it like you did, right? Because it wasn't working for you anymore.
No, and it was totally unhealthy, and it was taking a toll on me and the people around me, and especially the band, because Nathan and I have been together for, half of our lives. 25 years he and I have been together in a band and in our little circle.
Yeah.
So like he's spent since 2018, he's basically been my cheerleader, trying to keep me involved and making me feel like, he wanted me there all the time and was trying to kind of push me to be creative. But that, like I said, that block was there, that no matter what he said, he just couldn't get past that. And then finally there was a breaking point for me, and it was just time for me to go.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I've been in that position before where, Yeah, like I just can't imagine life without the band, and I'm staying in the band even though I'm not enjoying it, right?
Mhm.
And then
Yeah, of course.
relationships get strained. It's like, people always compare bands to relationships or marriages, but you could make that comparison too. I mean, how many of us have been in a relationship that we weren't that into, and we were just going through the motions?
Oh
And
yeah, 100%. I mean, I can count on my hand how many times I've been in that position. I stayed with it out of like because I was comfortable, not because I was content.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, I totally relate to that. I mean, the family thing, and Nathan and we weren't just bandmates. I mean, he grew up with me, like touring with Coalesce, and then when I left, he took over for me in Coalesce, and then he and I got together while Coalesce was still going, as they were winding down to start the Casket Lottery, and we've been together since. So I mean, it's more than just bandmates. I mean, he's my brother. I mean, and I just couldn't hurt my brother anymore. I mean, I want him to be creative, and I don't want to hold him back in any way. So instead of just having him keep pushing me and then me resisting, it was just better for me just to go and let him move on.
wow, yeah, and I mean, God, 25 years you guys played together.
Yeah.
That's a historic run.
Yeah. I mean, I started playing guitar when I was 15, and by the time I was 17, I was in Coalesce.
Wow.
And then I did Coalesce for, from 92, 93 until 97. And then immediately not really immediately, about 9 months later, rolled into the Casket Lottery.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm not ashamed of anything I did. I'm more than proud of everything I did. I mean, I've done more than most people will do in a lifetime, and I don't regret any of it. And
that's exactly what I was going to say, because you have been involved with so much music that I've grown up with and that I've loved my whole life. And I'm happy. One, I'm happy for that. And two, I'm happy that I get to talk to you like this, when we do these types of things.
Oh, yeah. I love it. I love being here with you. I mean, it's fun just to talk about music and talk about video games and life and everything else.
So that's one piece of it. And two, something else will come along. It's important to remember that, like, these changes in life won't kill you, right? Because I've been in this position where, the band is done. The relationship is done. I have nothing left to live for. Let me sink into drugs, or let me sink into alcohol, or like, it's all over for me. Not to say that you're going to do that, but like life will even out. Some new things will come in, some old things will go out, and the new arrangement will be there, whatever that is.
Oh yeah. I mean, with when I left Coalesce in 97, I was just like, yeah, I'm done. I'll never play music again. And then my friend John, who reminds me of Dave's friend Bob, like he's like the guy that just like pushes you, and he's a protector, and he's that guy. Was just like, well, don't do that. You're more talented than any friend I have, so you can't stop. And I was like, well, what do you suggest I do, John? And he's just like, I've got a friend that's got a band. They're looking for a guitar player. Can you still play guitar? And I was like, yeah. So I jumped in this punk band and started playing guitar. And then through that punk band, like I helped the guy promote a fundraiser for his club. And then I booked Coalesce to play that. And because I booked Coalesce, I ran into Nathan again. And then Casket Lottery was born. So, I mean, yes, something always comes of everything I've ever done.
Have you thought about if you'll ever play again, or is it too soon for that?
I say no right now. I've sold my gear.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even have my bass or any of my stuff anymore, but I still have instruments around the house, even though I don't have my main gear with me anymore. I still have a guitar and a few other things. And I've actually given thought to doing video game music.
Oh, now we're talking.
Yeah, like, that's what I'm really interested in, like doing ambient music for video games and stuff like that, like playing, Death Stranding and playing stuff like Mass Effect and hearing kind of the sci-fi ambient music in that. It's like, maybe I should be doing something like that. I mean, combine my love of music and my love of video games and just put it in one, and then maybe see where that goes.
That is a great idea. I think about doing something like that too. Like I'm starting to figure out home recording and all that stuff, and I want to do like some kind of ambient project. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that's going to be a learning experience, because I mean, as much as I'm into computers, I use them strictly for playing video games.
Yes.
So I have no idea how to do production.
Yeah.
Like when you're doing this podcast, to me, this is just like magic. It's like, how's he doing? This is great. He's like juggling so many things at once. And it's just like, I don't know if my brain can handle that right now.
This is
So,
actually pretty easy, but I'm starting to get into home recording and I opened the interface that I use, and there's so many buttons. It's really scary.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, our home recording during the Coalesce days was a 4-track Tascam recorder that we would just basically record, mix it down to 1 track, record, mix it down to 1 track until we had all 4 tracks full of the band. So that's how we had to do it early on. So
yeah, I think I'm just going to do that.
You're going to do that? I don't even know if I could do that anymore. I mean, it seems so archaic at this point. It's like, do people actually still use Tascam 4-track recorders with little ADATs on them or whatever, or is it all digital these days?
It's all digital, but there's definitely people who still use the old stuff. There has to be.
I would like to think so. But I mean, even Ed Rose at the end of Black Lodge, like, as we were recording all the Casket Lottery stuff, like, more and more, like, machinery would be missing when we would come in. And then the last straw was just like, Survivals for Cowards, I believe. No, it was Moving Mountains, was the last recording we ever did on reel to reel.
Oh, wow.
So that was all on reel to reel, 2-inch tape. That's the last recording we ever did on there.
That's interesting.
Yeah, before everything at Black Lodge went completely digital and Pro Tools.
See, now I want to go back and listen to it and like hear the difference.
Yeah, I mean, there is a difference.
Yeah,
I mean, there really is. I mean, not knocking digital. I mean, Survival still sounded amazing. Real Fear sounded great and all that stuff. But man, there's just such a difference. It's like vinyl versus digital.
Exactly. Digital is where it needs to be now. We obviously get plenty of good recordings, but I'm just curious to see if I can like hear the difference at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the guy that doesn't hold on to technology. I'm always looking for the next new thing. So, I like digital. I like 4K. I like all the new HDR and all the new, catchphrases and buzzwords and stuff like that. I love all that, but I still have a great appreciation for vinyl.
Oh yeah, I still buy vinyl. That's like if you're gonna buy something from a band, I think that's what you want to buy. It's the records look nice. It's a physical thing to hold on to. It's good.
Yeah, I've got a drawer full of like oddities, like Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett, and then some Casket Lottery stuff, and a little bit of Coalesce stuff, and Olivia Newton-John, and weird stuff like that on vinyl.
So I have to ask you an important question since I have you here.
Yes.
What games are you playing lately?
I just started playing the Guardians of the Galaxy game again.
Is that good?
It's incredible. I mean, it's like I tell everybody, it's like if Naughty Dog made Mass Effect, and that's what it feels like. It's kind of got a sci-fi comedy feel, like early Naughty Dog and like Uncharted style, if it were kind of semi in a Mass Effect style world. So I mean, it's that kind of quality. It's like really high quality, like cutscenes, voice acting, all that stuff is incredible. Yeah, it's one of my favorite games of the last generation.
Oh wow,
and this generation. Yeah,
that's cool. And what else? Yeah. Anything else?
I'm playing through Destiny 2 still. I keep telling myself I'm not going to play that game anymore. and I delete it, and then the next season rolls around and something cool shows up, and I end up re-downloading it like an idiot and playing it more. So still doing Destiny 2. I mean, I've been playing since Destiny 1 Alpha.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's how long I've been playing the game, since 2013, 14, something like that. So,
whoa.
Yeah.
I took a big step today. I finally uninstalled Warzone. They have.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I got hooked on it in 2020 when it premiered, but ever since Warzone 2 came out, they've been making it worse and worse and worse and worse. And I logged in today before I went out. I was like, let me play for an hour, because they introduced a new map that's actually pretty good, Vondel, right? I've been playing that, and I went on and they added all this horrible cartoony shit, like the characters can shoot out a giant electrical beam now, and then these guys you get this super jump, and if someone jumps next to you, you instantly die. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. And I finally uninstalled the entire game, and I'm out.
And that's a big old file too. That's like hundreds of gigs. So you got a lot of space back now.
Yes, and I'll probably do the same thing you did, and then they'll fix it, and then I'll like install it again. I hope I don't.
We'll see what happens. Because the Microsoft FTC thing, the merger between Activision, Blizzard, and Microsoft is going to go through next Monday or Tuesday.
Oh, really?
So yeah. So the FTC they were trying to do a preliminary injunction, and they didn't get it. They didn't get an approval from a judge, and right now they're in the middle of appealing it. But the head of the FTC is also under investigation by Congress at the moment. So they don't think the appeal that they dropped on Wednesday is going to pan out to anything, because as of midnight tomorrow, the deal is done. So they can't appeal it. They can't do anything else. And then it's done by Friday. And then they'll close a deal on Monday or Tuesday of next week. So Microsoft Xbox will be owner of Activision Blizzard.
Well, I hope they straighten out Warzone 2, because I'm sick of them ruining the game.
I think they will, because I think that's the whole reason for wanting Activision, is to have those studios and kind of have, them overseeing stuff like that. I'm really hoping that it helps Activision, and maybe will straighten up Activision's reputation. Yeah,
because it's not good right now.
No, it's not. I mean, the whole last few years with all the abuse allegations and stuff like that. And
yep.
Bobby Kotick running the Activision and Call of Duty and their titles into the ground, to where you're just trying to make money as fast as possible, and they're just running all these teams and all these games into the ground. So
yep.
Hopefully with a little oversight, stuff like that won't happen as often.
I hope so. But I also I've been meaning to buy a ColecoVision console for years now.
Oh yeah.
And I was on eBay and I saw someone made a AV modded ColecoVision, so that it doesn't have that like old input with the
weird dongle that you had to screw into the back of your TV and flip the switch on it.
Exactly. So I was like, AV modded, and I didn't have the money for it, but I was like, I gotta buy it. There's one left. So I bought that, and I have a couple games already that I purchased over the last year or two. So that's gonna.
Did you get Donkey Kong?
Yep.
You have to. Donkey Kong is the best port to that era console for that game.
I agree. I have Donkey Kong and I have Spy Hunter. Spy Hunter was the very first game I ever played that I got hooked on. So I have those two ready to go.
That's a good game to hook on.
Yeah. And I told you I was playing Resident Evil 2 Remake. I finished that. That was fantastic. I have I have 3 Resident Evil 3 Remake downloaded, ready to go. So I'm going to jump into that soon. Never played it. So
you doing 4 as well?
I'm going to do 4 too.
4 is incredible.
I'm going to do 3, 4, and 7. I don't know if I'm going to do 8 yet, because I've already watched somebody play it on Twitch.
Oh, Village?
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, they added the new third-person controller, so you can play over the shoulder like the other Resident Evils now.
Oh, I like that. I like the sound of that. I'm going to have to decide which one I want to do.
4, you can't miss out on 4. I already played through 4 3 times, and it's fantastic.
3 times?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I watched...
I'm that guy.
I don't play games more than once very often, and if I do, it's like years and years later.
I'm like on my 6th playthrough of the Dead Space remake.
Ah.
And I'm on about the 6th playthrough of the Callisto Protocol.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm a big nerd for that stuff.
Dead Space is another one I'm going to do. I've played part 2, but not 1 yet.
You haven't played 1 yet? Oh, then you want to play the remake. I mean,
yep.
The original is still pretty cool, but like the remake is the original if it was like a director's cut.
Yes.
So all the stuff is still there, but they've added to and kind of tweaked things to where it's more modern sensibilities.
Yep.
And they flesh out the story and characters a little more than they were able to in the original Dead Space.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to do that after all the Resident Evils, so I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah, it's a good one. And Dead Space 2 is my favorite of that series of Dead Space 2. So I'm hoping they remake Dead Space 2.
Yeah, why not? So, Stacy, how are you doing personally? How is everything? Family good? Are you good?
Oh yeah, we're great. My son just turned 10 on Saturday, and they spent the evening at Taylor Swift. So, like, I spent like 2 hours getting them to the concert because of traffic on Saturday, and then I spent almost 2 hours waiting for them to get out of the concert in the parking lot. And so I basically sat there and listened to like the second half or a good portion of Taylor Swift just from the stadium, and it sounded incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. The family's great. I'm working too much at my job, to my construction job, and it's too darn hot here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, things are good, man. I'm just trying to explore new things, I guess, because I used to draw and paint. So I've been buying more stuff to maybe get back into that, because once I kind of became real serious about music, I kind of dropped every other artistic endeavor and just concentrated on music. So now I'm thinking about getting back to that. My brother and I, like 15 years ago, we started talking about making our own video game.
Oh, wow.
And he does animation and 3D design, and he's made video games and stuff. And he worked for a local company that does VR and AR. So they have these like augmented reality experiences and these VR experiences and stuff like that. So he and I are talking about possibly doing that. So like the story I had 15 years ago for a video game, I'm trying to flesh out at the moment to see if we can make a game out of it.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't promise anything, but I mean, I'm going to give it a shot.
You have to. Now you have the time, right?
Yeah, of course.
You never know what can happen. I mean, I made this podcast on a whim, and look, now I'm here talking to you.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Hopefully I'll be that lucky. Hopefully I'll make this video game on a win. And next time we're talking, I'll be interviewing you, or you'll be interviewing my video game next time.
I hope so.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So in the beginning of the show, I mentioned that Jerome's Dream did an audio tree session. Now, if you haven't seen this, get yourself over to YouTube and watch it, because their new record is easily a top 5 record of the year, The Gray In Between. And they sound so massive live. Like, it just sounds insanely good. The new addition of Sean Leary to the band, his guitar tone is just sick. And I caught them live when they were in Brooklyn. It sounds awesome, and the audio tree sounds awesome. But Stacy, do you know what sounds even more awesome? What
sounds even more awesome?
When they give me a shout out on the audio tree. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I don't sound more awesome than them playing music. But listen, I have the clip. Here it is. I'm going to play it for everybody.
What are your favorite podcasts? Do you have any?
I do. Do you guys? The New Scene podcast is cool. That's another punk podcast.
Okay.
A lot of great interviews, a lot of great coverage of the scene and the culture.
There you go. There's our mention.
That's a shout out, man.
You got to love it. Eric, you're the best. Jeff, Sean, you're also the best. So there you go. That's it. But Stacy, what I want to do in the end of the show here, sadly, recently we lost Rick Froberg from Drive Like Jehu and Hot Snakes. So I want to end the show with a Drive Like Jehu song. But Stacy, we were talking earlier and you said Casket Lottery actually played with Hot Snakes recently?
Yeah, it was right before we recorded Short Songs for End Times, when they were actually still doing live music before Short Songs. And we heard they were coming through, and Nathan's a huge fan. We're all fans of, Rocket from the Crypt and, Driver Like Jehu and Hot Snakes. We were like, man, if we can get on that show, that'd be amazing. The local venue threw us on there, and we played with them. And I just remember they both came up. Swami John and Froberg came up, and John said, I like that song, the chuggy one, and I'm not even into metal. And that was like the funniest thing. We quote that every single time we played that song. That's the greatest compliment ever. I mean, those are two of our heroes, and that's the greatest compliment ever. So yeah, we had the pleasure of playing with them, and man, it's such a huge loss for the music scene.
I love that story. But yeah, really sad that we lost Rick, because Drive Like Jehu, Hot Snakes, legendary bands. So in honor of Rick, we are going to end the show with Adam Jack by Drive Like Jehu. I'm back next week with a new episode and a new guest. So thanks everybody for listening, and until next time.